She didn't stay because she understood. She stayed because she loved. When fear scattered the disciples, when confusion swallowed hope, when the story looked finished, Mary Magdalene stayed. And because she stayed, she saw what no one else saw. Before the resurrection, before the empty tomb, before centuries of speculation and misunderstanding, there was simply Mary from Magdala, a real woman from a real Galilean town. Not a legend, not a symbol, not the caricature history later turned her into. Luke tells us Jesus cast 7 demons out of her. That doesn't point to scandal, it points to severity. 7. Completeness. Her bondage wasn't light, and her freedom wasn't partial. Mary knew darkness. She knew what it meant to be trapped, overpowered, undone. And she knew exactly who set her free. People who've been rescued that deeply don't follow Jesus casually. After her deliverance, Mary didn't fade into the background. Luke places her among the women who traveled with Jesus, who supported his ministry, who stayed close as he moved from village to village. This matters, because Mary isn't just present at the end of the story. She's part of the journey. She hears the teaching. She watches the miracles. She sees the opposition grow. And when following Jesus becomes dangerous, Mary doesn't disappear. When Jesus is arrested, the night swallows his followers. One betrays him, another denies him. The rest run. Peter follows, but only at a distance, until fear overtakes devotion. But when morning comes, and Jesus is lifted up for the world to see, the Gospels keep naming the same woman, Mary Magdalene. Matthew names her. Mark names her. John draws her closer, standing near the cross itself. While the disciples hide, Mary stands where love and loss collide. She doesn't intervene. She doesn't understand. She simply refuses to leave the one who once saved her, now suffering in front of her. She watches him breathe. She watches him weaken. She watches him die. Love stays even when it can't fix anything. When the body is taken down, when Joseph of Arimathea lays Jesus in the tomb, Mark tells us Mary Magdalene is there. She sees where he is laid. That detail is quiet but crucial. Her witness doesn't break. Her memory doesn't blur. She knows where death has been placed. And then the Sabbath comes, a day of forced waiting, a day of silence. Before the sun rises on the first day of the week, Mary goes back. John tells us she comes while it is still dark. Not just outside, inside too. She is still grieving, still confused, still shattered by everything she saw. But she goes anyway. Love doesn't wait for understanding. Love moves toward what it has lost. The stone is rolled away. Mary runs. She tells Peter and the other disciple, they come. They inspect the tomb. They see the linen cloths. And then John says something almost unsettling in its simplicity. They go back to their homes. But Mary doesn't. She stays. She stands outside the tomb, weeping. This moment is easy to rush past. But don't. The apostles leave the empty tomb. The woman remains at it. She doesn't yet believe in resurrection. She doesn't grasp what God has done. She is simply unwilling to abandon the place where she last encountered Jesus. Sometimes faith isn't confidence. Sometimes faith is grief that refuses to walk away. Through her tears, Mary looks into the tomb again. And now, she sees angels. But even angels don't stop her weeping. She turns around and sees a man she assumes is the gardener. Her words aren't polished theology. They're raw devotion. They have taken my Lord. Tell me where you have laid him. She isn't asking for glory. She's asking for a body. She wants to honor Jesus, even if all she can do is mourn him properly. Love will keep reaching for Jesus, even when it misunderstands God's victory. Then Jesus speaks. One word, her name, Mary. And in that instant, everything changes. She doesn't recognize him by sight. She recognizes him by relationship. The Good Shepherd calls his sheep by name, and she knows his voice. Rabboni, teacher, master, the one who knows me. Grief collapses into joy. Confusion gives way to clarity. The risen Christ stands before the one who refused to leave. Jesus sends her. Go to my brothers and tell them. The first resurrection message is entrusted to Mary Magdalene. Not to Peter, not to John. To the woman who stayed. She goes, she tells them, I have seen the Lord. And Luke tells us something uncomfortable. They don't believe her. Her words sound like nonsense. Idle talk, but resurrection truth doesn't depend on being immediately accepted. It depends on the one who speaks it. Scripture never calls Mary Magdalene a prostitute. That label comes later, when stories were merged and Scripture was ignored. The Gospels are careful with her name. They never confuse her. They never diminish her. They remember her for faithfulness, for presence, for staying. Mary stayed when the cross was unbearable. She stayed when the tomb was confusing. She stayed long enough for sorrow to turn into revelation. And that's why her story still matters. Because resurrection often reveals itself not to the fastest, not to the loudest, but to the ones who remain. Some people leave when faith becomes costly. Some walk away when answers don't come quickly. But Mary shows us another posture. Stay. Stay with Jesus in suffering. Stay when understanding lags behind love. Stay when all you have left are tears. Because sometimes the difference between despair and hope, between silence and revelation, is simply staying long enough to hear your name spoken by the risen Lord.